Alright, so I thought I'd make a short video about getting impressive, mouth-watering, delicious dessert type food shots. This doesn't just apply to desserts, but that's kind of what I've been focusing on lately, I think, because I've been eating so many of them. The other night I went down to a favorite bakery of mine called La Mexicana here in Austin, and it's like an all-night bakery. I mean, you can go down there and get some desserts anytime. And one of the things I really like to pick up over there is something called the tres leches. A slice of cake is this big. It's kind of a big, it's more than a slice of this cake should be, but I eat little tiny pieces at a time, so I don't take in too many calories at once. But anyway, so I got back home with that, and I said, you know what? I have my tabletop set up already, this over here, for another tutorial that I had just shot. You probably saw that the other day, and that was the one about using vegetables for portrait lighting practice. So I said, hey, I'm going to take a quick picture of this delicious looking cake, and so that's what I did. And then I promised a tutorial, and so here it is. Now, I used to shoot food on occasion for editorial purposes, like local magazines would send me out to a restaurant if they were doing features on food and stuff. And so I'd go out there and take a couple of speed lights and shoot food. This was usually for local restaurants that wanted to feature their appetizers and drinks and stuff like that. So it'd be really quick run and gun stuff, and sometimes I'd just throw an umbrella over the top of some food and take some pictures at a Dutch angle or something like this. It's pretty easy stuff. Usually someone would prepare the food, they'd have these different plates, and they just kind of just line them up for me, and I just shoot the pictures. On occasion, I would be hired by someone to come in and shoot food for their small business. And I did that for a local business called the Cupcake Bar. Shot some pictures of cupcakes. So this Thanksgiving, undoubtedly, you're gonna have a lot of food sitting in front of you. Lots of delicious pies and turkey and even vegetable plates with that glistening butter. So if you want to take some pictures of food, whether it's just to document the delicious goodies at the dinner table this year, or you want to do it for editorial purposes, or maybe you've got a small business and you prepare foods for people, I've got some tips for you here, and let's get started on them right now. All right, so maybe first and foremost, I suggest you use side lighting. You want to create contrast. You really want to bring out the texture of these food items. And how do you do that? You create shadows. That's how you bring out texture. Now, unlike with portraits where you kind of want to de-emphasize the texture of the skin, people don't want to see all those little bumps and things in the skin. With food, you want to see that stuff. That's what, someone sees a picture and they see the texture of a cake or whatever, that's what makes their mouth water, right? The glistening of the butter or whatever moisture, whatever it makes the item moist, that gets people's mouths watering. So yeah, I suggest that you light from the sides, or from the sort of, even not directly from the sides, but even, bring it back a little bit. So you're lighting this way. Here's the camera over here. You're lighting from back here, and you're creating shadows across the texture. Now, when you do that, when you're lighting from the sides, you're gonna usually have somewhat of a shadow up in front, and that's okay. The whole idea is to highlight the food in terms of giving somebody the idea of what it feels like. But if you do want to fill in that front shadow, that's perfectly fine too. And I've done that too, where I don't really want to bring another light in, but I'll bring in a reflector, even just like a white sheet of paper or something, and just kind of just bring that in. That can help fill in the shadows, make it not quite so contrasty. Now, what light do you use for something like that? You can use window light. The window light on one side, a pretty strong reflector, or even a small mirror on the other side, and that'll kind of give you a two light thing. But realistically, you bring along a couple of speed lights. They don't need modifiers on them. Again, you're going for some kind of a hard light, so you don't really need to use modifiers. Just the bare speed lights. A couple of speed lights, one on each side. They don't have to be symmetrically opposed to each other. It's not like they don't have to be even. One can be a little like this and the other like that. one a little farther away, you know, adjust the power. In other words, to make it look a little more natural, you don't want the light to be perfectly symmetrical. So definitely a couple of speed lights. Also use creative depth of field. Now this is a trick that they use in editorial food photography. You just use that shallow depth of field. It looks really cool, and it brings the, you know, the most prominent thing that you're trying to feature up front. And again, that could be the front side of a piece of cake or something. And I'll show you an example of that with my tres leches cake in just a moment. But yeah, you want to use that shallow depth of field for a number of reasons. I mean, sometimes what you've got around the item that you're photographing isn't that special, so you want to blur out the background a little bit. And the atmosphere is important because it suggests an environment for the item that you're photographing. Say, for example, you're taking a shot of a delicious breakfast platter, okay? Well, maybe you want the environment to look like it's morning in a wholesome kitchen. You definitely don't need a dark corner restaurant environment to a plate like that. So what you're really trying to do is create an atmosphere that makes sense, and the atmosphere can actually be the environment. It can be the tabletop. It can even be just the plate that the food item is sitting on. Again, that's where depth of field comes in as a useful tool, because sometimes you don't have a lot to work with and you've got to kind of blur things out a little bit, because where you really are isn't what you're trying to portray. So you use blur to your advantage. So sometimes, as in the case of these cupcakes, you know, I've brought little props with me, like little food props, tabletop things, just things to add a little bit of color to suggest a party atmosphere. So again, atmosphere is very important. So how do you suggest the atmosphere? Lighting effects on the food, on the immediate area, and maybe even the background. You use color and you use creative depth of field. All right, now let's take a look at that delicious tres leches cake, and I'll show you what I did here. Now I just placed it again. So let me just show you again. I just placed it right over there. I placed it on the top of. I placed it on that tabletop. Put it on a plate. Just extremely shallow depth of field. Now I was too lazy to just go ahead and set up my speed lights, so I just used the lights that were there. They're the video lights, the hot lights I was using. But because I have these little 2-foot soft boxes on each one, man, they're a bitch to remove and put back on. So I just left them there. The lighting was too big and soft for, you know, this effect that I'm talking about, where you're trying to create contrast. And so what I did was I just kind of turned them out and feathered them in a certain way, so that I'd just get that kind of quality of light that I was looking for. Something a little more contrasty, a little harsher. And here I go. I'm trying some different angles, zooming in and out. I think I was having a lot more fun with the video aspect of this than I was with actually. You know what? I don't think I shot any stills of this. I guess in a perfect world, I'd just grab a frame off of this video and use it. Yeah, so I didn't get any stills. I was just really focused on demonstrating how the lighting for something like this would work. And quite frankly, I wanted to hurry up and just break off a piece of that for myself and just get started on it. All right, so there you go. Use side lighting, get that contrast, use creative depth of field, and take the atmosphere under consideration, whether it actually exists or you're sort of constructing it yourself. And try this out at the dinner table this year at Thanksgiving, if you celebrate Thanksgiving. You don't even need to pull out your fancy camera. You can do this with your phone. You know, if you've got constant light to work with. Otherwise, yeah, bring your camera out, bring a couple of speed lights. Say, hey, before anyone gets started on this, I want to take a quick picture of it. Have a good time, document that delicious food. Hey, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, click that like button. If you haven't already, go ahead and click subscribe, leave me a comment. Hey, maybe share some of your food pictures with me. Kind of haven't had lunch yet, so maybe that's where that's coming from. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. That's it for today. See you next time.